I should see if the old demographic demise video exists. Um, because I'm trying to think of where there was something that I was starting to consider, and I was like, no, 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 I definitely got that from someplace. And I was like, maybe it was the demographic demise video back in the day, which I'm not sure if it still is up. And it was totally this thing that was like, it was funny because it got some reaction, of course, very late by various people left of center, and it was funny because this kind of reaction, it was one of these things of like, okay, this is this is a problem that there's no way around. And by the time the left was complaining about it, yeah, China was already starting to get ahead on this. And that's where I think, is it breed ready was the term that they had? Was some weird thing that they were doing, and then like it vanished from the internet. They're like, oh no, that was just this, idea that something, it was, and apparently, like, yeah, it was just one of these many things where they were trying to get a list of women who were of childbearing age for some reason in the People's Republic. But so the thing that I was thinking about this was the Democratic Party now has really a very, so there's a strength in a way that the Republican Party has, that people who don't have children or have already raised them have still, it's to our advantage to politically vote in a way that's advantageous to people who have children. In any way that it goes wrong for a short while, and eventually there's like a slow buildup of wealth again as families have to do the things that they have to do financially and in the market and so that starts to just generate, that's people. You're generating people, so you actually have your community going on. So being from San Francisco, California, there's a point at which you start to realize that there's times where you're like, there's not many kids in this or that part of town. Then there'll be a wave. There was like a wave where a bunch of people moved in. They have kids. They buy, they're buying up these pretty expensive places, and that was at that time they were expensive. And that was around the beginning of the .com era. So eventually, like, I move up to Oregon in the early 2000s, see 2007, 2008 crash and all that. So the thing that's, I remember an article saying that San Francisco had become a child desert. I was like, and then it described other child deserts, and I started to really like, okay, no, this does seem to be kind of a blue enclave thing, but there wasn't, that hadn't congealed yet. This idea of these enclaves of blue voters had not really congealed yet. And there was still people who were switching sides on ideas and stuff, and the orange man had not cometh yet. So something that started to hit me about all this is now you have retirees, many of which are baby boomers who are, by just the sheer numbers, they don't have the money saved. They are up against a very specific set of groups that have very different interests going on, such as people who want children who are liberal, which that's just the solid middle class that we think of as the dot-commers, the Silicon Valley types, the kind of the hipster of the West Coast. This kind of, actually, yeah, this sort of this new economy that's come into existence. A lot of those people that are very stable, they're relatively moderate in their voting. Now they've turned solidly, like a very solid left, but their interests are very different than, say, somebody who then is single and in some way politically almost extreme, which is something that absolutely, you guys have the numbers that has started to happen within the party. And that all these groups have just enough, or not even just enough, they have some pretty wildly different political interests. But when it comes to like economic policies, I mean, there's no way around it. These groups cannot, one of these groups has to win. The way that they're approaching economics, one of the groups within the party has to win, because the other groups can't make it, or would have to pay for that program or that economic policy set. And this is going to be a hard thing to juggle, especially as things start getting a little tight and tough. It's going to be hard to juggle. I don't know how the Democratic Party can even begin to try to manage it. Who would be able to manage it? Because at some point, somebody's going to let rip with something that just admits, like, what is this? It's a garbage disposal. That famous thing with AOC, where people are like, how don't you know what a garbage disposal is? You got to be pretending, and just, like moments like that are just going to be too odd, too mask off in some way, too like, come on, you're playing with us. But yeah, those sets of interests are so different from one another economically that I don't know how the party is going to balance them out. That was weird. Okay. And so it was just this keeping it pretty simple on this one. It was just something I was starting to think about, and would be interested in seeing how do you guys detect this? Because these are very differing groups. The people who are like Forever Young and Burning Man compared to the Democratic voting, mom and dad with replacement plus, that they're very different voters in a lot of cases. But where they're similar, they kind of can't be separated, and they absolutely think that, and so that's a tough place to be. Like, you're trying to sell certain kind of ideals, but when it comes to the funding of them, that's it falls on mom and dad. All right, later.